Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Huddle Up with Howard Richards. I'm Mike Claiborne, and we are going to talk some football for a bit. And we got a lot to talk about, Howard. We finally have an official week of college football under our belts. And to be quite honest with you, I wasn't overly impressed, but I don't think anybody should be at this stage of the season because it's early, and because of the transfer portal and all the new coaches we have running around. I think it's going to take a while for us to actually know who's really good and who isn't.
I think you're right. Certainly the teams at the top, Alabama, Georgia, are always going to be, who we thought they were. But the rest of the teams, I think there's going to be a big scramble. I don't know that you're going to see any dominance at the next level for several weeks because of those very things, which I think makes this season in college football that much more interesting, especially early on in the season.
You and I have discussed this before. I think ranking a team in September or even August is probably the most unfair thing there is and the most inaccurate item there is, especially now with the transfer portal and coaches trying to figure out just who they have on their team. Now, obviously, Alabama's always going to be in the conversation because they don't have a lot of turnover. But I think for you to rank a team this early is doing everybody a disservice, which is why I don't really pay attention to them.
It's all a guess.
Yeah.
How does Florida, who actually won a big game, beat number 7 Utah, how do they go from being completely unranked and almost a disastrous team before Billy Napier comes in there, you all of a sudden jump to number 12? I mean, is that – I don't know that that's ever happened. It's just so improbable. Are they a number 12 team? Really?
Well, here's the thing. Was Utah really a number 7 team?
Well, and that was my next point. Exactly. So I don't – and here's the thing about and we've discussed this before, the thing about those rankings is that most of the writers that are voting, they don't get to see these teams. They rarely watch them in the spring. They certainly can't see them unless they're covering that team in training camp. And then we know it's limited because coaches don't want to show what they're doing in front of the media because they're fearful that the media will write something about, what they've installed offensively and defensively. You don't get to see it. So they're really going by past rankings, tradition. That's where you're always going to see Alabama and Georgia, teams like that rank near the top at the beginning of every football season because it's easy for them to do so.
Mm-hmm. You know what? It's funny. I think coaches give the media too much credit in recognizing football and recognizing the offense and what they're doing defensively. And they say, we don't want you watching. I got news for you. I think 75% of the people who actually go to practice wouldn't know a good football player if he's tackled by one.
That's probably right. They're just out there writing, they're taking detailed notes.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand the nomenclature. They don't understand really defensive schemes. Everyone knows what, 2 deep or single high safety is and things like that, but they don't know the nuances. There's people that play the game don't really know a lot of the nuances.
Exactly. Well, the terminology is the first trick.
Yeah.
And you just touched on it. So I just think that they give the media too much credit. And I see it in baseball every day. And how little people actually know about what they're watching, but it is what it is.
Listen, I think that coaches are they're very superstitious in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
They're very protective of their programs. A case in point, when my first 4 years in Dallas, we had probably the worst practice facility in the NFL, anywhere in the NFL. It was a single level corrugated tin or corrugated aluminum shack with one practice field, okay, and roaches and the whole nine. People say, the Dallas Cowboys, you got to be kidding. But no, until Valley Ranch was built in 85, this is what the Cowboys invested in, if you will. Behind that field was a Days Inn motel, 2-level Days Inn motel. So if you're staying in that motel, you can watch out if you're on the, I don't know, maybe the west side of it. You can see the whole Cowboys practice facility, our outdoor weight room and everything. So back in the days of the old Cowboys Redskins, the deep rivalry with George Allen and Tom Landry, it was rumored, I think this is more the rumor, that the Cowboys would buy out the hotel during the week to ensure that there were George Allen, no one was in those rooms spying on the team.
Considering it was George Allen, he'd be the guy that would try something like that.
Exactly. But they're paranoid. They're really paranoid about what may or may not be going on in the stands.
Well, if you go to practices in some of these facilities now, you ever notice how tree lined the practice fields are, where no matter where you're at, there's like these redwoods that are sprouting over the practice field to make sure nobody can have binoculars or anything that can see anything. I mean, it's like having a private pool, a pool in your house, that's shadowed by trees or a big fence, because coaches in the NFL are so paranoid. And you see it in baseball when a manager or a coach comes out to talk to the pitcher, they always cover their mouth because they don't want anybody lip reading. Mm-hmm. So there's different reasons for it to take place. But I agree with you that coaches can kind of overdo it from time to time with regard to detail and security. And I get it, because they think that the other guy's paying that much of attention. And I think if you let a guy do it, he will do it. He may have to take some time to break it down. But, one thing about coaches, man, the good coaches are always observant and they're always detailed to the last T.
That's Nick Saban for you. I mean, listen, if you looked at all the top categories in the history of college football, Saban's name is going to be in the top 3 in every single category, because he is that. But because of his habits, because of the way he does things, he's always won. And he does things in a lot of ways that are very atypical when you look at coaching staffs. For instance, he's not necessarily loyal to his staff. There's a lot of turnover, which I think makes him that much better of a coach.
I agree.
Right? Because how do you continue to produce these great teams when you've got that turnover? But year in and year out, he figures out a way to do it.
And I'll turn that page on that, because I think about Tom Landry, and you play for him, and you always are going to see the same coaches there every year. Ernie Startner is going to work the defense. You got the same guys on offense, and they didn't change very much. But in Saban's case, because the money is so good for these assistants to move on, and the pedigree of being part of Nick Saban's tree certainly gets you in the front door, is why I agree with you. Saban it's about Saban, not the team, not the coaches. He has a way to coach his players, coaches.
Yeah.
And that's really what he's doing more than anything else, is coaching coaches to coach the good players on the team. Missouri, what do you think? I mean, it's early. It's Louisiana Tech. And they did what I thought they should have done, is blown them out. It took them a little while to get it going. But overall, I think they had to be happy with their performance.
I think so. Minus 3 big plays for touchdowns on defense, which certainly has to be cleaned up before Saturday's game against Kansas State. I thought this defense sort of reinvented itself. First of all, stopping the run. Mizzou, I think, only allowed 8 net yards rushing. I mean, that is 180 degrees from where they started in the early part of the season in 2021. So that's an extreme positive. When you're forcing a team to throw because they can't run it, then you have a distinct advantage. And with the pass rush that I think, with the depth this team has, the experience that they gained from the transfer portal and the guys that were coming back, and they're very deep along the defensive line, I think that really played a factor in keeping the Louisiana Tech quarterbacks on the run and forcing them to make errant throws. As a result, Mizzou got 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions, and there could have been a 5th. I think there was a touchdown negated by a pass interference penalty on the very first series of the game. But I also thought the secondary played much, much better too. We're so used to seeing, in my opinion, these guys allowing receivers to just catch balls and make the tackle. Mm-hmm. I saw more aggressive play, guys really challenging receivers, trying to defend against those passes. And I think that's an extreme positive. The more you get to do this, the more aggressiveness you play with on defense. Yeah, you're going to get beat from time to time. But I'd rather get beat being aggressive, trying to make plays, and to just sit back and allow things to happen. So if what we saw on Saturday from this defense is any indication of how they're going to play the rest of the year, then I think they're going to take big strides. And, teams will have to take notice of Missouri's defense, where in more recent years, they really haven't had to do so.
One of the things I like about Missouri, and while I have been a basher of scheduling, I like that they start off with a team they're supposed to be. And then they step it up a little bit. They go on the road early to Kansas State, who's better than Louisiana Tech. And as you can see, the schedule gets progressively more challenging. So they're going to have a couple of games on the schedule where they can kind of go back to basics and tool up some things that they need to do. But I like the process of how they're developing the season with the way their schedule shakes out.
No, I agree. And I think that's necessary because now with a team like K-State and, of course, you get Auburn in week 4. That's the beginning of your SEC schedule. You need games like Kansas State, which is probably a team that's very situated much like Missouri is. Made some improvements from the previous years. You've got a new head coach in there. You've got some key players at key positions. Kansas State brought in, the Nebraska transfer quarterback, Adrian Martinez, who he didn't have a spectacular game on Saturday, but I think that he was steady. I think he was like 11 out of 15. They didn't have to throw the ball much because they ran it a lot. But he's a quarterback that they think that they can depend on, and he's going to be pretty good for that team going forward. But they're better on defense. So that's where the challenge is going to be for Missouri. They've got some players at the defensive end spot, at linebacker, and at nose tackle that they're really going to have to account for if they're going to be successful running and throwing the ball against K-State.
It's going to be fun to watch. I'm looking forward to it. Brady Cook looks like a game manager. I don't know if he's going to be the guy that's going to be a difference maker as far as winning games late, but I think from what he's shown in his brief appearances from last year and this year, that he's out there to make sure he doesn't lose the game for the football team until everybody else kind of gets on board.
Yeah. I don't really like the term game manager, just because I think it's kind of it has a negative connotation with regard to the player in the position. So right now we know Brady Cook's doing exactly what Eli Drinkwitz in the offense is asking him to do. But he's a guy that's got some tools, and he's got a strong arm. He's pretty accurate. And to me, the wild card with Brady Cook is the fact that he can run. He's got a lot of speed, and he's very decisive when he decides to tuck and run the ball, and can make guys miss in the open field. Now, obviously, we'll have to see what he does against better competition. But I think the more that Brady plays, and he develops that confidence and gets to know his receivers that much better, I think he's going to play that much better. He's a confident guy, right? I think his leadership skills are there. He's always wanted to play for this school and only this school. And I think that he handled the fact that Missouri was looking at bringing in other quarterbacks to, bolster the quarterback room. And he never flinched. He never said, I'm going to transfer. He never got pissed off. I think it just made his desire to be better even higher. And I think that is going to be a benefit for this team offensively. You got a weapon like Luther Burden. Listen, this kid really shined. He only touched the ball 6 times, and he had a couple of opportunities. He did drop one, which was deflected for an interception. But as he learns the game, remember, that's his first college game. But he was dynamic. His first touchdown run, breaking 4 tackles. And he wants to get in the end zone. And I think that obviously the better the competition, he's going to learn that he's going to be covered from time to time. But I think it'll make him work harder in order to get open. And Eli, they'll have to figure out ways to create for him to get his opportunities. Because, once he gets his hands on the ball, he's going to be dynamic. But that will open up the passing game, I think, for some of the other receivers that are also very, very talented. They just need their opportunities. But here's the thing. You know what you have. Now you've got to figure out a way from week to week to game plan to your advantage based on the opponents that you're going to face.
Let me ask you something with regard to Burden, because the obvious way to defend him is try and double him. which means there's going to be an opportunity for another guy on the other side of the field to get more balls just to loosen up things. So who do you see emerging as a player that's going to take the burden off of, so to say, burden with regard to not seeing double coverage all the time?
Let's start with the slot receivers. Whether it's going to be Dominic Lovett, who caught every target hit ball that was thrown to him. I think he caught 6 balls. Or Mookie Cooper, when they bring him in, he was not really used the past week. But that's the thing. You may see one guy getting all the attention in one position this week. Next week, it may be someone else. And they haven't seen Mookie Cooper. Barrett Bannister is very steady it's like his 10th year at Mizzou. But he's going to catch the big ball for you. He's got sure hands. He's going to get those tough first downs because they don't really account for him. And Towski Dove is a guy that has come up in big games too. But that's why having that depth at receiver and a quarterback that can get them the ball is just so key for this team. As long as you get that protection up front, and the line only allowed 3 pressures last week. They never touched Brady Cook at all. And they were able to open up holes for the run game. Mizzou rushed for over 320 yards on Saturday. I don't care who you're playing. I mean, that's doing something. Guys
Yeah.
So again, I like with this coaching staff how they've pulled together players and have coached them up. Regardless of the fact that they're not all 5- and 4-star players. They play very well cohesively, and they understand conceptually what they're trying to do offensively. And once your players understand your philosophy, and that's the biggest thing, to try to get a young player to, not just to buy in, but to understand why you were doing certain things. And when you understand the why, it makes your job easier when it comes to executing on the field.
Let's move on to the NFL. And one of the things I've come to appreciate about the National Football League is they know how to schedule. You look at the opening weekend of the schedule, and you have New Orleans at Atlanta. That's been an incredible rivalry over the years. Pittsburgh goes to Cincinnati. They know they don't like each other. A team that I think everybody needs to pay attention to, Philadelphia, is going to Detroit. You got New England and Miami. I mean, you look down the schedule. And Howard, there is no off weekend for anyone. I mean, you pick a team, and I can give you some history about why this is going to be a game worth watching. It's going to be fun this year.
I was listening to a report about how the NFL does scheduling, and without going into detail, it's like every base is covered, from the way there's interleague play and then there's division play. Obviously, every team plays each of them within their divisions twice, and then you rotate divisions across the other conference. But then those other games that they plug in there. There's a reason that they do it, and they do it really for not just the competition level, but also so that the fans get a chance to see, teams that they may not normally see. And then you figure out, how they change the schedule for depending on how well a team is playing or how poorly a team is playing, for the Sunday night games, the Thursday night games. They try to find the best matchups possible. And it doesn't always work, but conceptually, I think their intention is very deliberate. And that's to keep the fan viewership up. And also, for the level of competition. We know that there's a lot of parity in this league for the most part. But being able to see your team across a number of platforms now, I think is why the NFL does things so particularly well, and why people are always going to be fans of the NFL because of the way that they innovate. And scheduling is a big part of why they have so much success.
All right. Everybody likes to be a prognosticator at this time of the year. And one of the things that I've come into play with is fantasy football. I no longer do it. I did it for a few years. I had some reasonable success. But now when I listen to media people talk about games and teams, they're doing it for all the wrong reasons. They're trying to do it because they have a player in their fantasy pool that they want to pump up. And we've gotten away from rooting for teams. We now root for players. And I'm not sure if that's good or bad for the game.
Listen, football's always been the ultimate team sport. So I would have to say it's not good for the game for that very
Hmm.
reason. You know, one person, one star on your team is 1/11th of your success on whether your offense, defense, or special teams are on the field. That one guy can't get it done, especially without the help of 10 others doing their jobs. And so that's why, fantasy football is just what it is. It's like I never could get into it. Once I took a look and someone invited me to be in a fantasy league years ago, I'm like, this is no. It's like playing touch football. Why would I play touch football, Mike?
Hmm.
Well, I mean, I just could never do it. Once you play for real, um, fantasy is a joke. And nothing against those that are fans of fantasy football at all, and that's not what I'm trying to say. It's just different for me. But I think that uh, having teams that year in and year out because of their traditions, how they draft, how they build their programs, is why I think the foundation is team first as opposed to um, cheering for particular players on any given organization.
All right. Give me a team that you're looking forward to seeing play this year, and other than the Dallas Cowboys, we already know they're at the top of your list. But what team do you
Don't be
think
so
is?
sure about that.
Yeah, well, you know what? They have issues. I mean, losing Tyron Smith is huge. I know they signed Peters,
Hmm.
but Peters ain't Smith. All right. I mean, when he's healthy and wants to play, Smith is as dominant of an offensive tackle as the game has to offer these days. And not having him, uh, it really puts them in limbo because the running game was already a little suspect. I think Ezekiel Elliott. I didn't think he was in great shape last year, and the offensive line really didn't come together. You still have a Pro Bowler in Zach Martin there, but they still have some moving pieces that haven't been able to fit. Throw in the fact you don't have your best tackle, which means your passing game might suffer a little bit. And Dak Prescott's already on the run as it is. So I'm just not sure what that's going to mean for the Cowboys in the long run.
Well, that's a make or break unit for this team. And listen, signing Peters, I think it was a great move. If, in the very least, he coaches Tyler Smith, who's going to be playing left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
He coaches him up to the best of his ability. Now, that's going to be hard when you're coaching a guy from the sidelines or from the practice field because he's still got to get it done in the games. Um, and maybe you give Peters an opportunity to get himself into the right frame of mind and to be ready to play at some point, even at the age of 40 or 41, and hope that he can pick up the slack where Tyron Smith being out, makes a difference, and you're able to slide Tyler Smith, over to the left guard position. That, I think, for Cowboys fans would probably be the best case scenario beyond having uh, the new rookie starting at your left tackle position. Which, listen, that's dude, that's hard. That is not an ideal situation to be in. But listen, they're paying the guy a lot of money to be that type of player, and we'll see how the Cowboys' offseason evaluations will come to fruition.
Everybody seems like they had a Super Bowl trophy ready to hand over to the Buffalo Bills. And maybe this is a year they break through. And they are a good team. But, one of the things about the NFL today, man, you're just one injury away from being back in the first few picks of the draft. I mean, it's that much of a difference. So, are you better to be better to be good or lucky if you're the Buffalo Bills?
Definitely lucky. You've and to go now over the course of a 17 game season, uh, it takes a lot of luck.
Mm-hmm.
To avoid the injury bug, but then when you're beating up on teams, playing these teams in your own division, especially, to try to come out unscathed, that's pretty hard. By mid-season, you have a decent idea of which teams are going to be able to go the distance. But, it's a grind. It is a grind. And I think Buffalo probably learned a lot from playing against Kansas City in the Super Bowl in a game that I think a lot of people felt that, I mean, it's not in the Super Bowl, in the championship game, AFC championship game. I think that stung them. And trust me, I know that feeling that the Bills players walked away with, having lost in a close game, in a championship, in a game that that could have easily gone your way, and you could have been playing in the Super Bowl as opposed to the team that actually did. But listen, it's hard to ascend to get back to that level again. There's not a whole lot of teams, especially current day, that can really boast to say that they've gotten back to that point again. It's really hard to repeat that. And even when you do, again, there's no guarantee of getting to the Super Bowl. Dallas played in my rookie year. We lost to the 49ers in the championship game, and got back to the championship game, of course, in a strike-shortened season the next year, played the Redskins, lost again, and never got back to the championship game again, throughout the next 4 years that I was on the team. So it's a hard proposition to be able to go week in and week out, especially with injuries. Listen, in 86, I think at the Cowboys, we were 6-2 in the first half of the season, and finished with a losing record, only going 1-7 in the second half because our quarterback, Danny White, broke his wrist. Now, we lost a lot of close games that you think, with having your number one quarterback in place would have made a difference, but that's the game. Yeah. And that's why you have to develop talent and develop depth so that when your frontline players go down, you've got someone that can step in and be just as effective as a starter. So, yeah, I would rather be good, but I would rather have Lady Luck on my side also.
You and the ladies.
I just want to be like you when I grow up, Mike.
Okay.
My big brother, Mike Claiborne. My big little brother. Little big brother.
Let me tell you something. Don't do as I do. Don't do as I do. And damn sure don't do what I say. Hey, I'll tell you a team I'm looking forward to watching, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. They may have as good of an offensive line as there is in the game right now.
Probably the best. The best.
And with Jalen Hurts having a guy to throw to in Devontae Smith, they've got a decent running game. And with Hurts being, I think, one of the classy leaders in the game, I think that's a team that's going – I don't know if they're going to, I would say, sneak up on anybody, but I think Philadelphia has a chance to go longer than anybody else in the NFC.
Jalen Hurts – to me, is a very underrated player. And we saw that when he was benched at Alabama in favor of Tua Tagovailoa, then he got his shot to come back in, and what did he do? He won. This kid knows how to win. He's been bred to win. He's humble. He works hard. I think people forget just how talented he really is. I think the worst thing you can say about Jalen Hurts is that he doesn't necessarily have the quickest release. But again, playing the position and having his coaches understand what his strengths and weaknesses are at the position, now you can develop your offense around that. But then having a great offensive line, I think that's something that will make Jalen Hurts that much better and make that Eagles team that much better on offense because he's throwing to a familiar target in Devontae Smith. But there are other players on that team that can step up. A lot of people have picked the Eagles to win the NFC East. So, it's always going to be a dogfight in this division that has been down in a lot of ways. But I think over the course of the NFL, the NFC East has been the division that, to me, consistently has produced the leaders or the most, I'd say, NFC champions and also Super Bowl teams.
Everybody does this, and I don't know why we're doing it. Everybody has this prediction on who's going to be in the Super Bowl. I find that to be kind of, silly because none of us ever go back and remind ourselves that when we didn't have that team, we never I know New England won it, but I picked such as we never go back and retract what we said or try and highlight what we said. But I will ask you this. Not to say that they're going to win it, but give me two teams that we should pay attention to. And I'll leave it at that because predicting something as we go. And obviously this is an injury-free or a non-serious injury team that's going to be on the field. Give me two teams that we need to pay attention to.
Certainly in the AFC, Kansas City. Okay. Let's go four teams.
All right.
Kansas City and we talked about Buffalo, but I think another team that can sneak in there is the Raiders.
Really?
Derek Carr is quietly becoming that, to me, that A-level quarterback that teams really have a tough time defending against. Again, I don't know how they're going to play, but I think on paper that team could surprise a lot of people. Maybe a little bit of a reach, but outside of maybe the Chargers and Justin Herbert at quarterback, I think the Ravens are the team that may have the best chance to make an impact in the AFC. On the NFC side, you mentioned the Eagles. Of course, I'm being completely neutral here. At the beginning of the season, I would have thought that Dallas had a shot, but you just can't depend on them. So I'm not going to be a homer here.
This time.
This time.
Yeah, you get one time a year, and I guess this is it.
And aside from the Rams, maybe Green Bay. But Green Bay's a little suspect because obviously Aaron Rodgers doesn't have Devontae Adams. But, how do you pick against a team led by Aaron Rodgers? And we all know quarterback is the position that you have to have. It's got to be stout. You've got to have a guy that can not only lead, but a guy that you can always count on in every situation. And that's been Green Bay's mantra. But beyond the NFC is a little bit harder to predict as opposed, because I think the AFC is probably at the top four teams, or probably a little bit better overall than the teams in NFC. Can't believe I'm saying that, but because I've always been an NFC guy. But I think that's the reality right now.
I'm looking at San Diego, and I'll throw Buffalo and Kansas
I think you
City
mean LA, right?
Yeah, LA, the LA Chargers. Yeah,
everyone still will always.
I like the Chargers. Yeah. I'm going to throw Kansas City and Buffalo out because they're the obvious teams.
Mm-hmm.
On the NFC side, I've already mentioned Philadelphia. Now I'm going to mention a team that nobody's going to pay attention to, and not because they were on Hard Knocks, but I think Detroit could be a team that could be a difference maker in their division. I'm not going to say they're going to win a division. I'm not going to say they're going to make the playoffs, but I think they're going to play better. I think they've got some very interesting players, and I think they'll even be better in the second half once they have Jameson Williams on the team. I like the way Brad Holmes is quietly building that organization. So I'm going to say Detroit will be noticed. I'm not going to make any other prediction beyond that. I think Detroit will be a team that will show improvement.
And the job that Dan Campbell has done thus far, I think he may, of the last five coaches that team has had, minus Jim
Caldwell.
Jim Caldwell. I almost said Campbell. Jim Caldwell, who I think got a raw deal and probably could still be the coach of that team. Minus Caldwell, I think Dan Campbell has maybe built to coach this Detroit team. They're quietly stockpiling, key players at important positions. I don't know if Jared Goff is the guy that can get it done, but if you got a healthy Jameson Williams, that certainly helps. And we got to shout out our own from our city of St. Louis. So we all hope he does well and makes an impact as a rookie. But they're getting better on the defensive side also. And I think they're going to make some noise and surprise some teams certainly in their own division. Can they overtake teams like the Bears? Can they rise up above the Vikings? Which is also a team that's a little bit interesting for me also. Just don't know. Haven't seen enough of them to see if they're a team that can also take that next step.
Well, we're going to see how things shake out. The NFL is here. It starts on Thursday. College football comes back this weekend. Howard Richards, always good to visit with you, sir. We'll have a lot more to talk about next week when we huddle up with Howard one more time.
Thanks, my friend. We'll talk again next week.
For Howard Richards, I'm Mike Claiborne. We thank you for watching and listening to Huddle Up with Howard on ClaibsOnline.com. Have a good week, everyone.